Welcome to this first part of the Own Your Future project by H&M and the Book of Man. I'm Jason Fox and I'm the mentor for this first chat about resilience and teamwork for the lads that are involved. Without any further ado, Alex, hit me with the first one.
So first question, how do you keep motivated even when you feel like you might have really low confidence?
Motivation it can be hard even with confidence. Do you know what I mean? So first of all, the motivation side of things is when it comes to even like let's go back to the simplest of analogies, getting up in the morning. That requires motivation. A lot of it is what I do is picture myself beyond that thing that you find hard to get motivated for. The minute that you've found yourself starting to do something, so getting out of bed, I know it sounds like a simple analogy, but sometimes on a Monday morning, for me, most of the time, I'm like, oh God, it's a Monday morning. What am I going to do? But then while I'm laid there, I do think about, right, I know for a fact that I'm going to feel great about the fact of getting up and actually starting that morning routine. It does make you feel good. An early start is awesome. So I would suggest that there's a bit of visualization that I do going, I've been doing it for a while now and it does work. And it's as simple as, how am I going to feel once I've got us out of this bed? And so that's the sort of motivation for me. When it comes to the confidence side of things, we're all human and we all suffer with bouts of low confidence. It's natural. It's never going to go away. It's just something that you've got to manage. And there's been so many situations where I've found myself in a predicament where I'm like, what am I doing here? Do I actually deserve to be in this sort of situation? It's hard. I'm worried about my own ability in these sort of circumstances. And sometimes you have to give yourself the proverbial slap round the face. It's not a slap round the face. It's a bit of awakening to yourself where you're like, hang on a minute. I'm a person. I know X amount of, I've studied or I've learned something about something. I've got experience in something, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this pit of low confidence, and you have to remind yourself about who you are and where you want to be, and you remind yourself about that feeling of motivation as well. And then all of a sudden, because you've done that and you've reminded yourself about who you are, like I've in the past had bouts of low confidence when I've been a senior team leader within a special forces team, which are all quite, they're motivated people. And I've been in those sort of instances where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Am I good enough for this? And I've had to, give it the old and say to myself, hang on a minute, I've gone through this, I've done this. I do deserve to be here. And not only that, I've got a responsibility to the people around me, but most importantly, you've got a responsibility to yourself to push on and dig deep and try and realize that through low confidence and fighting that, you'll become confident on the other side of it. Does that make sense? It's about being a little bit more aware.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense. What's a good mindset to have when you're seeking employment, especially during difficult times like we're in now?
My main career for me was the military, and that finished after 20 years. And not only was I dealing with mental health, I was dealing with trying to find work whilst not being in a good space. It's different to what we're in now, but theoretically it's a difficult space. And at the time I was really, really in a bad spot, and I wasn't really sort of projecting myself positively to people that I was going to see, whether it was for work or whether it was for anything, meeting people, relationships, anything like that. I was in a space. And after I'd eventually sort of got myself back on track, what I did say to myself, which I wish I'd said to myself at the beginning of that journey, finding work in difficult times, is you've got to spin whatever the situation is into a positive. A negative mindset isn't going to help you get out of that, regardless of what's going on. You have to dig deep. It's hard, and I know that, but you have to dig deep. And the best way to spin that into a positive is to realize that you're on a journey. If you're trying to find work, you're on a journey. You actually might find work, but don't be surprised if that's not the right one. And it doesn't matter if it's not the right one. And that, in your mind, you might feel like you're failing because you're like, oh, that didn't work out, I didn't enjoy it. But ultimately, the journey is you're finding out about yourself, and you're becoming a more rounded character because of that. And so the more, and journeys are supposed to be fun. You might not know where you're going, but you're going somewhere, and you can see things along the way. You meet people all the time. And it's all about that, trying to spin it into a positive that gets you in the right headspace, and then eventually you're projecting yourself in a positive way, and people start to pick up on that, and then you start to enjoy how that process. It might not take that long, but it could take a long time. But either way, you've got to try and make it fun.
So my first question for you is, how can you deal with the effects of lockdown on your mentality?
Yeah, so lockdown has been tough. I like to think that I'm lucky with regard to the lockdown, due to the fact that I've had to deal with similar, not the same, because obviously in the entire planet's wrapped up in this one, but I've been in situations where I have sort of been locked down. I haven't got an awful lot that I can do. I'm stuck and confined to a certain space. But the way that I've dealt with it in the past, and within this sort of, the last 12 months really, is to make sure that I've got a reasonably robust routine, but not stringent, as in it's flexible. So if I don't manage to do something that I've got within that routine, I don't freak out about it. I'm like, okay, it's cool. Everything's cool. I'll just continue on, and I'll try and pick up what I've missed out on a little bit later. So I'd say routine is the first one. Keep that in place. Respect for the people around you. If you're in a place on your own, then that's not necessarily relevant, but respect for yourself. So always keep yourself clean, tidy, and semi-presentable. I'm not the greatest at that, obviously, but you know what I mean? Just, because when you groom it, sounds a bit bonkers, but when you're grooming yourself, after you've groomed yourself, feel good. Feeling good means you're in a better headspace. But the one thing I have learned actually on these series of lockdowns, I suppose, is I've embraced boredom. At first, I was dreading it because I like to keep busy, and then I found myself at home sitting on the couch, and I didn't have much to do, and I'm like, God, I could be going out of my mind. I can feel myself. I might start, losing the plot a little bit. But then I suddenly realised it's very rare outside of lockdown when you can embrace boredom, and you've got the opportunity to harness it and like spend a bit of time with your own head. I've embraced boredom by sometimes staring out the window and daydreaming, and I've actually enjoyed it. And also picking up books. I'm a nightmare for reading books, and I've actually got round to spending time reading books. And so, when these times hit us, try and capitalize on them, and again spin it into a positive. But embracing boredom is a big thing, because I tell you what, when this all goes away, one thing we'll miss is being able to sit on your couch and stare out the window thinking about nothing. When you've got nothing to do, don't do anything, because it ain't going to last forever. That.
No, that was a pretty perfect answer. Thank you.
So my first question is, in your view, what makes a successful person, and how is that kind of connected to confidence?
I think with success comes a lot of bouts of low confidence, I would suggest, because from what I've seen, in my observations, and obviously this is my opinion, but a lot of people that have managed to succeed, there are the odd exception, but it comes from a lot of hard work, and it comes from embracing failure. And with each failure, when something fails, especially if we look at like what everyone looks at, businessmen, they look at businessmen, and they, if you look at the big achievers, the big people that have really hit it hard and hit it high when it comes to achieving, if you look back properly into their past, they've lost everything, sometimes once, but more often than not, 2 or 3 times, and they are failures. And that requires, I think, resilience, which you pick up along the way anyway. It also embrace failure, but they don't dwell on it, which means they learn from what's happened to them, but they're not sat there going, oh God, that was so rubbish and I feel so bad. They're like outright, I suppose they become a little bit analytical, where they're like, right, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Right, I don't need to keep dwelling on that. Let's move forward. So there's an element of resilience, an element of being able to bounce back. But ultimately, I think a lot of it comes down to flexibility of mindset, which means, when those things don't go according to plan, they don't freak out. They're able to just be like, well, hang on a minute. Let's see the lay of the land, and then move off in a different direction. And obviously you need a little bit of stubbornness, because when the going gets tough, you just need to have a little bit of grit when it gets tough and things keep falling down around you. That stubbornness to continue on. It doesn't need to be a horrible stubbornness where you're complete, you know, that stubbornness to just keep going, keep persevering.
Yeah. So just keep backing yourself, almost like betting on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Even if, you know, no matter how many times you fail, pick yourself back up and you're like, I know I've got this. I've just learned a load more and I know how to go again. And you go again, you go again. And ultimately, the more you fail, the more rounded you are at the end of the day anyway, because you've learned a lot more than someone. If someone just, you know, hits that sweet spot and is lucky first time, the chances are, if the longer that goes on, that luck or you know, good fortune, you know, when it does come crashing down, they might not, I'm not saying it's gospel, but they might not always sort of deal with that sort of trip as well as some others that have already done it from the early stages.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, man. Yeah.
How can you like move on from rejection after, let's say you apply for many jobs and then you keep getting rejected? How do you like persevere? Jobs that ask for experience before you need to start. Where do you start from? Like, if you get what I mean.
You've got two options. If you get rejected, you can sit down on your backside and give up. But where's that going to get you? Or you can just keep going. You can keep going. And it does take a bit of motivation, and it can be tiring. But what other option have you got? If you give yourself that mindset, like, so, you know, I wanted to do something in the military. It required me to go on a course that was quite hard. And I went on that course and I was like, well, I haven't got anything else. And, you know, I need to do that. And it was the motivation to keep plodding on. You know, each time I was aching and, you know, don't get me wrong, close to tears. I just remembered, I was like, hang on a minute, what else is there? You know, let's keep going, regardless of the pain involved and the you know, the constant, what you feel at the time is constant rejection, but it's not. It's just, again, it's down to that journey that we spoke about earlier. You know, you're still on that journey. You're just learning a little bit more about how to sort of deal with certain situations. And ultimately, you know, it will happen. It will come. It's not going to be no for the rest of eternity. It's going to be yes. You know, you've just got to keep fighting on. And people like a fighter as well. We all know that. We like, you know, so when there's people around you, see you keep getting back up and going at it, they'll see that and people will like it, and it's an endearing spirit. The experience thing is difficult, but again, it comes down to, if there are people out there that are saying you need this experience, go and find it, even if it means doing something for free or doing something that doesn't feel comfortable, obviously, especially in the bloody times we're in at the moment. But it does show that you've got want to crack on and desire. And again, it comes down to that spirit of getting up, getting out there and looking at how you go about getting experience. And then the next thing you do, you go around to those people, you're like, I've done X, Y, and Z off my own back. And, you know, if it was me, I'd be like, awesome, character, love that, let's get amongst it. So I think a lot of it is hard rejection, but, you know, keep yourself in the fight. We all want to be in that fight. So just keep yourself in there and then experience, get out there and get it. Keep asking. There'll always be someone who's got a good heart and they'll give you an opportunity to deal with that and get the experience.
So I wanted to ask more just about sort of your training and sort of the fitness side. So I was wondering, how does training sort of tie into your approach to life and motivation?
It's like, training is probably one of the most important parts for me. I know we're all different. We all have different things that float our boat. But for me, I think it was like being conditioned into me just from, you know, starting the career that I started from a young age. But it does play into my psyche quite a lot. I have to make sure that I make time for it, which is difficult. It can be hard. But then if I see that I've got a busy day coming up, there's been times in the past where I'm like, busy day coming up, not really going to get up in time. I'll sack it off. And then I feel rubbish at the end of the day, and I'm like, it's got to the point now where I'm like, right, I might have a busy day, but I'm just going to get up that bit earlier, as hard as that is. Comes back to the motivation, Alex, getting up. And I sort of like make sure that I give myself time for that. But it is like super important that I make time for myself. And it doesn't need, obviously it can't be in the gym now, but whether it's in the gym, whether it's walking around the common near me, whether it's going out and about, having the opportunity to go out and just walk in the hills or out in a bit of country, it doesn't matter what it is, but for me, it's crucial. And I like to vary my training as well, you know, whether it's a bit of endurance, bit of HIIT, bit of weights, whatever. But for me, it's super important, and it's super important for my mind. And I think, you know, for a lot of other people, I implore people to get out and just do that little bit of exercise, whatever it is.
Quality. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for that.
So you've kind of mentioned about your physical health and stuff that you've done, but about mental health, how do you go about telling your friends and family about it? How do you spark those conversations?
It's hard. I found it hard to begin with. In fact, I didn't do it, and that's why I found myself in a bit of a pickle, really. But it is the most important thing. The one thing that saved my life and got me out of a pit was to talk. I cannot, and I'll never stop talking about how important it is to talk. And when we talk about finding the right people, when you're at the beginning of, go back to the journey, like life's a journey, but when you go back to the beginning of noticing something different about yourself, whether or even it's something that's been sat there for a long time, but all of a sudden you become conscious about it. If it's sort of like a negative feeling or a mood that you're not keen on, once you've noticed that, you're starting that journey. You have to go out and find the right person to talk to. It is scary. You're like, well, who do I talk to? I'm not going to talk to anyone because I don't trust anyone. But you're punishing yourself for no reason. You've got to go and start talking to people. The first person you talk to might not be the right one, but at least you've started that journey. But after a period of time, you will find the people that you can talk to, and then all of a sudden you've built a network around you. You might have found some bad apples along the way, but that's just, that's life. We can't predict that, but it's all about finding those right people. And when you find them, it's an enlightening and empowering thing. And I tell you what, talking about your mental health with people, whether it's a person or a group, is the most enlightening and empowering thing, because all of a sudden you're airing your dirty washing, yeah, but once that's done, you haven't got to keep up this facade that everyone keeps up. You don't have to worry about that wall anymore, because you're like, oh, that's me. If you don't like it, fine. But you, with those people, they will like it because they're there to support you. So it's a mega difficult step. I completely get it, but it's one that's so important. And once you do, once you initiate it, once you start heading off in that direction, it is empowering and it's awesome.
Cool, thanks.
What can you do to maintain personal growth and avoid falling into the kind of pit where you feel like you're going to give up?
I've read about it before. I think I might have even written. If I wrote about it, I probably copied someone. But basically, there's different phases within like our growth cycle, and we're constantly in it. But for me, you've got to get yourself out of the comfort zone. There's like a zone called the comfort zone, and you've got to push yourself. So if you're sort of plodding on, everything's groovy, and you're sort of like, I'm easy with this. That's a warning sign. That's an indicator that maybe you should start looking to sort of push yourself again. And it's about, people always worry about being uncomfortable, but then there should come with uncomfortable a good feeling, because like you're suddenly in an area that you're not that aware of. You don't really know much about it, but that means because you're uncomfortable, if you stick with it, if you find the grit and determination to stay uncomfortable for a bit, all of a sudden you'll become comfortable. And that place will never be uncomfortable again, because you've learned about it. You've learned how to move around it. You learn how to talk in it. Then you've developed, and then you just go on and find the next uncomfortable place. And it's about not being scared of the uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable, I'm telling you now, that's a good thing.
How do you kind of keep a stability between kind of like your like mental well-being, your like physical well-being, and kind of internal?
It is difficult to neglect them, especially when you want to have fun. But I would suggest that everything in moderation is very, very important. I am not one person that goes on fad diets. I'm not teetotal because I don't need to be. I know there's, some people need to be teetotal because, to venture into that landscape is not for them. But for me, be moderate and be sensible about what you can and can't do. Yes, go out and have a fun time, but remember, it is all about, if you're feeling healthy, you are going to be way more productive. And so it's a hard balance to hit, but it takes a little bit of experimentation. Don't be afraid to sort of like let it go every now and again, because ultimately you're going to find out a little bit about yourself, and you're going to feel that you're not firing on all cylinders. I'm actually going through a phase now where I'm not drinking, I'm getting up early, I'm having cold showers in the morning, cold showers at night. I'm sort of keeping, and I'm feeling great. And I'm at that. I have to be, because I'm away working soon, and I need to be firing on all cylinders. But ultimately, at the moment, I'm loving it. My missus is, at night having a couple of glasses of wine. She's like, "Do you want one?" I'm like, "No." I'm like taking the, I'm taking the moral high ground, loving it as well, loving it. But ultimately, it is a happy balance. Don't sacrifice fun, but remember how it feels to feel good, because that's when you're at your sort of operating capacity, is when you're sort of feeling healthy. So don't forego it, but still have a balance every now and again.
Cool, thank you.
Aaron, so I was just wondering, sort of with the life that you've lived and the experiences you've had, what was the most important element in you kind of, first of all, managing sort of your mental health, and ultimately, I suppose, overcoming it, really?
The only thing, apart from talking, like I alluded to earlier, the only reason I started to talk was because I was honest with myself. We as humans spend so much time lying to ourselves about how we feel, or ignoring how we feel, that if you cannot be honest with yourself, you're onto a sticky wicket. So ultimately what that means is, like, when you've got an emotion or a feeling flying around you, wherever it sits in your body or in your head, don't ignore it. Be honest with yourself and say to yourself, "Oh, hang on a minute, I feel differently. And what does that mean?" And then for a long time, I pretended there was nothing wrong. That feeling was there, and I was like, nothing wrong. I lied to myself. Then I sort of like addressed it to a certain degree. But even when I turned around to someone and said, "Oh, I'm not feeling too good," I still didn't believe it in my head. I still tried to suppress it. And I'm never, ever going to get over that until I'm honest, because ultimately I know I'm lying to myself. Subconsciously, I know I'm lying to myself. We don't like it when people lie to us anyway. So be honest with yourself, be aware, consciously aware of how you feel, and explore it. Show yourself some self-respect and explore how you feel. And then you are setting yourself up perfectly to go and combat it, work out what it is that you need to do to sort of get yourself back on track and feeling good. So it's an easy one. Just be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of men particularly that can resonate with as well.
Yeah, we're pretty bad.
Me personally, I struggle with mental health, with how I look. And when you see magazines, how everyone is looking chiseled and everything. So I was just wondering, how do you, keep yourself up and say that, what, how you look is good, you look okay. How do you, feel better about yourself, confidence-wise?
That's a good question, and it's tough as well, because ultimately we're living in a world, especially now at the moment, everything's done through, it's done virtually, and we've got to be on, we've got to be online, we've got to be on social media. It's all important to us. There's a lot of noise out there, and it's only the noise you ever hear, and it's probably the one thing you should cut out. You are your own person. If we all look the same, it'd be a pretty boring place, boring planet that we live on. And understand that you're an individual, and you are who you are. You are who you belong to. You are your own identity. You don't need to be someone else's identity. And actually, that makes you a stronger person. If you succumb to all the stuff that's out there on social media, you're just being a sheep. Whereas, be a wolf, man. It doesn't matter what the wolf looks like. You've got to be that person that leads your own self. And who you are is who you are. You should be happy in yourself. I've been through these times. I'm getting old, mate. I keep looking at myself. I'm like, when do I start to look young again? But hey, who cares? It is who I am. I'm on that journey. You as an individual, every one of us we'll always critique ourselves far more than anyone else will. And you should remember that, and try not to be too hard on yourself, because we're all good. So try try to filter out some of the noise, try not to pay too much attention to social media or what's going on online or what's in publications, because ultimately they just cater for one person, and that's the sheep. I would suggest to say.
Thank you.
How important is that delicate balance between the mind and the body? And for you, which is it? It's like a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Like which one do you start with?
Everyone starts with the body, but I would say it's got to be the mind. The first thing you do in the morning is you're spending time with yourself, whether you're with a partner or not. You're laid there. When you open your eyes, it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you need to check in with yourself. That's the first prime opportunity to check in with yourself. But checking in with yourself and looking after your head and getting it into the right space is the beginnings of the happy balance between the two. If you can keep your sort of head admin in order, it then frees up time somewhere along the line to do the physical side and look after yourself physically. And you know, when it comes to physical stuff, it can be a 5-minute walk around the block. It doesn't need to be much. But the balance comes from the start. You know, as soon as you open your eyes, you're with yourself, and check in with yourself, see how you feel. Make sure you're set up ready for the day. And it all starts with the head. You know, that's how you organize everything. That's how you motivate yourself. All of it. It all comes from your mind. So I'd say, yes, there's a happy balance, but maybe 70% the head.
Fair. Nice one.
The stigma behind people, I found that they don't always consider that people in performing arts and like on TV and stuff have like anxieties and have kind of like depression and those kind of lingering thoughts in their own heads. So just kind of like how you've dealt with that and how you kind of consider all of that to be.
So when I did the first thing that I did on TV, this SAS show, you know, ultimately when I signed up to do it, there was a few reasons why I wanted to, but one of them was to talk openly on a bigger platform about mental health, which meant I had to open up. And I can remember that it was episode 2 of that series was the episode where I was going to talk about, and I knew it was coming. And the whole of that day leading up to 9 o'clock, I was so anxious, so nervous, so in a bad place. I look back on it, slightly embarrassed about my behavior, but everything that I worried about, this is one thing to take away. Whenever you feel anxious or you're worried about stigmas or anything else, the minute, you know, the reaction comes or the reaction you think is going to come and it isn't, nothing is ever as bad as you make out it is before it happens. And it's worth thinking about that. But there is a lot of stigma around, you know, the performing arts and that. And I think what you should take from being in that industry, and I'm nowhere near it either. I'm not creative by any sense, you know, stretch the imagination, sorry, but it's an important part of our culture. It's an important part of the, you know, global culture for people to express themselves, tell stories, reenact whatever we've done from the past, learn from history, all that sort of thing. And so, you know, whatever it is that you do within that industry, and I'm just talking specifically about that because it's a question from yourself, you should be proud and, you know, want to continue that on because it's important. It's important for people's well-being. You know, the most important thing for most people during this lockdown has been TV, Netflix, you know, and that's not, you know, that doesn't exist without creative people. So, you know, it's an important sector to be a part of.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is stigma, but try to think about what it will feel like after the event. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
The thing that's on my mind is a lot of toxic positivity has kind of become something that's recommended in countering mental health issues, and it's obviously pulling it to the other side of the spectrum, and that's kind of compounded with like hustle culture and always having to push forward. But for a lot of people, they don't feel okay sometimes, and how can you encourage those people that it's okay to not feel okay, but what can they do to make sure they don't kind of regress and make their situation worse as well?
Yeah, it's something that I'm quite aware of because obviously I'm like on social media and that, and I'm always talking. My message is always trying to be like, hey, look how happy I am. Whoa, that's awesome. Because that's not realistic. It's about, you know, times are hard. You know, I'm not one to say that I'm perfect and I feel happy every day. So a lot of it is about, it's the balance in the message. And that, you know, if anything, when people ask me that question, it's like, if you're feeling a certain way, That's just human. People don't go out of their way to want to feel down. It's a byproduct of being human, and so embrace that. It's part of us. You know, it is okay. I know it's becoming this phrase that I'm a little bit worried about, it becoming this phrase that everyone starts to hate. It's okay to not be okay, but it's true. If you didn't feel all right, it's because you don't feel all right about something. That's fine. Have a look at why you don't feel all right about something. It's worth looking at, because that is the point being, though, is to look at it is the only way you're going to get out of it. Because if you try and ignore it, you're not really going to get anywhere. You've got to explore it. Again, it comes back to sort of self-respect. Have a little bit of respect for yourself, and if you feel a certain way, have a look at it, explore it, because it's probably quite important. But yeah, it's a difficult one. Toxic positivity. I'm well aware of what you mean. Let's keep the message balanced.
Exactly.
Lads, I love that. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Cheers.
That's
Made
really
me
nice
feel
one,
young.
man. Thank you.
Made me feel young again.
Yeah. Awesome.